Welcome to Self-Taught, where former foster youth, like myself, share our real-life experiences with sex, health, and life. Hosted by the Reproductive Health Equity Project, these are some conversations we wish we'd had earlier. Hey, thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Kat, member of the Reproductive Health Equity Project, REPS, Youth Advisory Board, the YAB, and I get to interview today some of my co-members, Cody and Phillisha, and the face of Birthing the Block, Sarah Ferguson. Today, we talk about accessing prenatal care as a young person, what to expect, getting support you need from the medical system, and building your own support system, as well as the resources that are out there and that are available to help you. Let's start with a definition. Prenatal care is when you get checkups from a doctor, nurse, or midwife throughout your pregnancy and while you're planning a pregnancy, and it helps keep you and your baby healthy. First questions for you, Sarah. Who needs to know about prenatal care?
See, this is a loaded question. Everybody needs to know about prenatal care, whether you're a birthing person or a community member. Unfortunately, in like the last 100 years, with like the hyper hospitalization of birth, this is something all of our grandparents knew about and were well versed in, and like it helped and at least be helpful. But as a generation, we've really lost that. So everybody, kids included.
When's the right time to start accessing it?
In a perfect world of unlimited resources, as soon as you decide you are interested in co-creating, being pregnant, not being pregnant, you should start prepping your body. But ideally, as soon as you discover that you are pregnant, you want to start assessing providers, because in America, we do have a provider shortage. Outside of the provider shortage, we have a quality shortage. So ASAP. The general prenatal schedule is every 4 weeks until 28 weeks of pregnancy, every 2 to 3 weeks from weeks 28 to weeks 36, and every week from week 36 till delivery. A common misconception is that you're only going to be pregnant for 39 weeks. For your baby's lung and brain development, I really want you to strive and stay pregnant to 40 weeks. You will get a lot of pressure, but I encourage you to use your rights and stay pregnant as long as it's safe for you and your baby.
Cody, how old were you when you started accessing prenatal care, and what was that experience like for you?
That's actually a good question. I want to say 23. That's kind of sad that I can't remember. That's how much time just flies by. My daughter she just turned 2 on May 31st. So it's been a while, because it's including those 9 months of pregnancy, and now my daughter is 2. So it's been a while. I was accessing care pretty immediately after I learned that I was pregnant. I unfortunately had found out 3 days after I found out I was pregnant that I was diagnosed with syphilis, which is an STD. I got treatment through my pregnancy, and my daughter was born healthy. Thankfully, it was very, very exciting. But I did have a lot of challenges with the experiences I had accessing prenatal care. My first doctors, I was using Medi-Cal, so it wasn't the greatest experience. Like, my first appointments with my caregivers were very rushed. No one seemed to really know anything about syphilis. It wasn't treated as something that was high risk, but in my case, because it was undiagnosed for 3 years, I was very high risk. And so ended up getting transferred out and sent to infectious disease doctors, to UC Davis, which they did a fantastic job. But in total, it was difficult. I was seeing psychiatrists, the infectious disease, the OBGYN, but I did have success in them taking it a little bit more seriously. We were doing a lot of routine appointments. So I was seeing the doctors a lot more frequently than someone who doesn't have syphilis would. But yeah, it was hard. I quickly learned the importance of having a birth plan. I had attempted to write mine out. I had a lot of resources explain like what it was, but I experienced the lack of people kind of following my birthing plan when it came to finally actually giving birth. So yeah, that was kind of my experience in an overview.
when you're saying like that didn't have the best experience with having Medi-Cal, could you explain like what you mean by that? Like what you hoped would be different?
I mean, as a former foster youth, I grew up on Medi-Cal. I hear a lot of horror stories with those on Medi-Cal. And it was disappointing. Like I came in, I was really hoping for like a lot more information. Because I had talked to my insurance, and they sent me a list of different providers, and I did my research. I was Googling all of them, finding out what their ratings were, what people were saying about them. So I had felt that I really did my due diligence for myself of finding someone that was going to be good, and it didn't. And it was disappointing.
Sarah, do you have a response to that? I'm sure you have a lot of feelings about the medical system in general.
How do I say this diplomatically? You do not need to be good at hiring providers. You need to be good at firing them. And I think most birthing people, because of the way that we are socialized, feel really bad. I've done all this legwork. This person is supposed to be good, all of these things. And then you get in there, they never look you in the eye. They never do what they're supposed to do. And you're like, but you're supposed to be the best. And I think if you just kind of, even if you do really a lot of legwork, birth works on compatibility. And if that compatibility is not there, you need to gracefully not show back up to that particular provider. You need to go try somebody else. I think, and that's like really hard when we're talking about resources and like, I got to travel to a whole different side of town. But unfortunately for a lot of people, this could be like the future of their safety, the future of their lives. And so do not have any like allegiance to your provider. Your allegiance is to your baby and to you. And like, if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. Don't think about it too much. I'm not coming back here. Needs to be your attitude. And like have a running list of, these are the people. I've looked at your profile on this website. I feel like we can make this work. And like get a second, third, fourth opinion. Also, I pride myself on being like a Medi-Cal finesser. There are ways to get good Medi-Cal providers. You just have to like really talk. And I know it sounds weird, but like introduce yourself to the birth community, because regardless of where you live, there is like a birthing community. And the best thing about birthing people is like they're very vocal about their experiences. Go in like a Facebook group or Instagram group or wherever your groups are and ask, how was your time? What happened? What's the tea? Who are y'all recommending? Most local midwives, even if you cannot afford them, they still know who the good providers that you can afford are, right? Ask folks questions like, what's the tea? What's happening?
Phillisha, I also want to ask you, how old were you when you first accessed prenatal care, and what was the experience like for you?
My first experience with prenatal care, I was 17, and it was scary. Well, mainly because my partner didn't want a kid and I was pregnant and I was young, I wasn't ready, but I still didn't want to have an abortion. So that like made it intense. I did go to Planned Parenthood and everyone was so supportive and like asking me, oh, you don't have to do this. If you want to keep it, we have like somewhere that you can call and they'll help you get away or whatever like that. And I just knew deep down that I wasn't ready. So I did have an abortion and that was my first experience. But after that experience, I made it very like, it became like my life to go to Planned Parenthood just because they were like supportive for me. But when I moved, I had to find a new doctor and they sent me to this women's care. And then that's when like I had to start doing research. And like Sarah said, I had to learn the hard way, but you definitely have to like just speak for yourself, kind of ask questions and do not be afraid to switch over because that's like a big thing.
You had a really powerful story for us the last time that we talked about your experience. I wonder if he'd be willing to tell that story again for us.
Oh, totally. Yeah. So, yeah, it's easier for me to talk about it now because I don't like cry. But when I was pregnant with my son, and I guess technically it's my second pregnancy, but full term, I had a healthy pregnancy but I didn't find out until I was 3 months pregnant because the place I switched over to, I was going there for a long time and the nurse I always saw, she did not tell me I was pregnant. And I was going there like every 3 weeks because I wasn't feeling well. And I was pretty familiar with my body. So I'm like, okay, something's off. And she was just like, oh, you're fine. You're fine. And then one day I go and I'm like throwing up, all the pregnancy symptoms, throwing up, can't move, just tired. And they're like, oh, you're pregnant. Yay. And I'm like, oh, like last time the dad didn't want the baby. So what am I going to do? So where I live, they were telling me like, oh, it's too late for other options, but you could do adoption. And I'm like, I'm not going to give my baby up for adoption. Like, thank you. I'll just think about this. And she goes, oh, don't worry about it. You got this. And mentally, I'm like, that's supportive, but it really wasn't. Like, she took my options away from me. So then I was forced to go find another place because I just didn't feel safe there anymore. And I found another doctor through Medi-Cal, which was kind of hard. I had to go online, and then they were telling me like, you have to call this number, and my insurance had a specific plan, so I wasn't covered everywhere. That was so I had to drive like 30 minutes. I found another doctor.
Yeah.
The first appointment, he like did the tape measuring over my belly, and he's like, all right, see you next time. I'm like, you're not going to run any tests? Like, I'm new here. Do I have to pee in a cup? Sorry if that's TMI. But I'm like, like, what's next? And nothing. But I just stayed there because I was already scared and my son was fine. So I didn't feel like the pressure of just keep looking for places that keeps telling me they don't take my insurance. It's just intense. So fast forward, I'm 6 months pregnant now. Over time, nothing's happened. And then I go in for my ultrasound and he's like, okay, everything's look good. We're just going to take him out. And I'm like, I'm 6 months pregnant. Like, isn't it supposed to go longer, And I panic a little bit, but then I'm like, it's just a doctor's appointment. Just, get up and say, okay. So, and he's like, I'm going to have you go to the hospital and just check the baby's heartbeat. Cause I sensed that he saw that I was like, he's like, we'll just check the heartbeat next week and then go from there. I go to the hospital. They check me in and everything. They put like the things on me to check the baby's heartbeat. And he goes, like, maybe 20 minutes have been there. Oh, we're going to take the baby out. Why wait? And I'm like, I don't want to do this. And he goes, well, I saw something on your placenta. And I'm thinking, like, I said, what do you see? Can you tell me what you see? Can you tell me what's going on? And he goes, if I was you, I would stay here and let me take your baby out. And I said, can you just tell me what's going on? I'll have the nurse come and tell you, and you can sign the papers. And I'm like, he just walks out. I'm sitting there crying. I called my mentor because she works at the college that I go to, and she was giving me tips. My mentor encouraged me to get up and leave and go. If something is wrong with my baby, I need to go where I actually want to have my baby. And since I found out I was pregnant, I'm like, I'm having him at Hoag Hospital. So I left that hospital. I drove hour and a half by myself, pregnant, to the hospital to make sure that everything was fine with my baby. When I got there, they kept me overnight, but they did say nothing was wrong with my baby. Like, after that traumatic experience of him telling me there might be something on your placenta, or there is something on your placenta, and the baby's heart rate dropped, and we're just going to take him out, I'm thinking, I put myself in a whirlwind of more stress, which ended up stressing my baby out.
I'll jump in. I think for me, as like a provider in training, there are a lot of red flags. And these are things that we consistently see amongst folks who are like not of a certain age, right? I think like the biggest red flag is like something was wrong with your placenta and you just found out about it when you got to the hospital, right? Like, generally, like, there are signs and symptoms, and like someone should sit down and explain that to you. Like, hey, this is what a placenta is. This is what a placenta does. This is why it's important. If something is wrong with your placenta, or if something is different about your placenta, here are the impacts of that. If we let your baby stay longer, here are the impacts of that also. That is a consenting conversation. Not if I were you. Well, respectfully, non-birthing person, you are never going to be in this position, so I need you to be quiet. Okay. I don't want to hear about your value-based judgments on what I should do with my body, especially when you haven't told me all the things that are wrong, right? Or maybe they're not wrong. Maybe this is just like your way of treating this particular thing. And unfortunately, when people are not giving you all of your options, you don't really know if like, is this like a big issue, or if my baby sits in here for a couple more weeks and let their lungs develop, all will be well in the universe, right? So your provider should always be giving you context because that is their job. And unfortunately, a lot of providers see people and they make value-based judgments on what information they are going to give you. Unfortunately, you might have to become your own researcher. Go get a second. I'm not telling you to go home. Go get a second opinion, right? And sometimes it might cost you some cash. Also, if that ever happens to any birthing person and you feel afraid, please make them write in your medical records that no one was giving me information. No one was telling me what was happening to me. I feel, just go ahead and express yourself. Whatever it is, I need you have the legal right to have your medical records amended. It is really important as birthing people to always take at least one person with you. If you're really in labor, you're going to be in a trance. I don't expect you to advocate for yourself. You are a mammal. That is like not a biological capacity that you can really attain at that moment.
Cody, did you have any like a partner in your birthing experience? Did you have somebody that was there to advocate for you? I know you did mention that you had some resources connected to your school, but did you have like a go-to person?
Yes. So my main go-to person was my partner. We're still together. Me and my partner, we got pregnant very shortly after we met. So it's been a very long journey. But he was there through all of it. He is a first-time dad as well. And I also had my aunt from my biological family. I had reconnected with them several years ago. She was really a good support person. She's had 5 kids herself, so she's been around the block for this. So she was able to give me a lot of insight. It was great having that support through the pregnancy, but like me and my partner, we had sat down, we had those conversations of, if I am unable to advocate for myself in the delivery room, like I need you to step up. And even during the appointments, like he was able to ask questions to the doctors. Like it was really good to be able to, like they were actually willing to have him in, and like my provider was actually talking to both of us, not just me, about being pregnant, which is really nice. He loved it. He actually felt more included because from a lot of the stories that we've heard, they kind of put the dads on like the back burner. And yeah, I was really, really happy that was not his experience with our first child. But during delivery, I had gotten my epidural and it knocked me out. I was asleep for 4 hours and woke up and gave birth in like 20 minutes. But I was really out of it. And like the one thing that I had on my birthing plan was to not have a lot of people in the room, because all the hormones that I had during pregnancy, my social anxiety, like I couldn't even be in an elevator with people without bawling. Like it got so bad to be in public. And I was afraid that if there's too many people in the room, I was going to have a panic attack. And that is exactly what started to happen. I started having a panic attack in the middle of delivery. And thankfully the nurse was able to get me calm. Otherwise they would have had to do an emergency C-section, which was not what I wanted to do at all. So it got really, really scary, very fast. And like, I had wished I had more in-depth conversations of like letting my partner know, like, hey, if you see this many people in the room, tell them to get out. Yeah. And yeah, it was hard, but it did help having that consistency through the pregnancy.
If you're like ever bombarded with too many people in your like hospital room, regardless of like what your religious affiliation is or isn't, just say you need to pray and they all legally have to leave.
Phillisha, earlier you were kind of talking about, and Cody was also talking about, a lot of the resources that you got were kind of related to your being in school, which same for me. A lot of the resources that I've had just in life in general, I've gotten through my school's like foster care kind of programs, those types of support. do you have any examples of like specific resources that you've gotten that have been a support to you and how people might find them?
Well, I met my mentor through Guardian Scholars at my community college. So Guardian Scholars tend to foster youth, and my mentor's a nurse in the nursing department at the college, and she like volunteers her time with Guardian Scholars, and then she was like, I'd like to take you on, come over for dinner. I was like, okay, like, what do you see? Like, and I'm really closed off. When people like come up to me, I'm like, what's your intentions, But like, she turned out to be amazing. That was like the best resource I could have had for my birth. Like, her just telling me like it's gonna be okay. Tips, oh my God, tips were amazing, because this is postpartum, but breastfeeding, oh my God, if she didn't teach me, I wouldn't have been able to do it as long as I have. What other, being on Medi-Cal, Black Infant Health, they found me, like, I was just like, I told Medi-Cal I'm pregnant, is my baby going to be covered? Like, how does that go? They like, oh, you're covered until he's 1. And then Black Infant Health called like, hey, you don't have to be a part of this, but we like to give you some tips. And it's kind of like a parenting class, but like, they don't make you feel like you're here to learn to be a parent. You're there to learn about yourself because you're going to be a parent. Like, so that was like the 2 resources I really had.
I recommend all birthing people leverage. If what you're going to do is decide to spend $2,000 on a baby shower, I need you to demand that your gas pay for your childbirth education class. Okay.
Okay.
Like, no, I am that doula. I do not have a client that, okay, if we're going to spend all this money to take these cute pictures, let's talk brack stats. You do not have money for a lactation consultant. You do not have money for a doula. I need all these people who are coming to eat this free food and look at you and tell you, oh, we love you. Say it in cash. Okay. I'm very much like, let's get a gift card. Let's get a box.
Something useful.
Something useful. And so having people early on, or just even say, I'm going to go for, because when you actually add up the math, it's close in the state of California between lactation support, childbirth education, a doula, you're anywhere between like $3,000 and $5,000 out the gate, right? If most people walked into the situation knowing that people would use their resources differently. So I'm always that person to have that conversation. And there are a lot of free things. So like, hey, cousin, I found a doula. Somebody's going to subsidize it. All I have to pay is $500. You got $250 and my uncle got $250. Or, like asking people to show up for you differently is like a really wonderful way to engage community.
And I didn't learn about a doula until like I had already had my baby. Like literally the next day, Medi-Cal sent a letter saying like, oh, we get free doulas. You just have to do this. And I'm like, I told you I was pregnant 9 months ago. So like, what would you say, like where someone could find that resource?
I say Google is everybody's best friend. So like the best way to like research any kind of pregnancy resources, your city, low cost Blake. Los Angeles, San Francisco, low cost doula. All those things are going to pop out. There are a lot of great resources. Birth Workers of Color is national at this point. You can always just shoot them an email. Hey, this is what we're looking for. I live over here. Do you have anybody? Yeah. Also, Medi-Cal is starting to enroll doulas. And so they are becoming more and more prevalent. And like, in terms of resources, most people just love birthing people and like will go out of their way to like show up and help. And so like really asking for that is super important. And just like really leaning into the local birth community. Most of us know where all the free things are because we're constantly in contact with these people.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
And just to be super clear, I realize that we're kind of talking about all of this without really defining what exactly does a doula do super late in the conversation.
You're fine. This question. So a doula is a non-medical professional who is trained in physical and emotional support in birth. They are great because sometimes especially in those situations of coercion, our partners are also highly likely to be manipulated as well because they think something is wrong and somebody is tugging on your heartstrings. I, as a doula, I think this is complete bullshit. I need you to pack. I'm going to pack your bag and I need you to put on a diaper and we're going to leave. Because I think this is ridiculous. Yeah. And many times that is my job. I'm like, no, I'm not a medical professional, but I do know where to get you a second opinion from. There's like this really great resource in California called Frontline Doulas. You can call the hotline. You can say, hey, I'm pregnant. Can you point me to like a free doula? And they will subsidize the doula so that they can care for you.
This is just really important stuff. Mothering is so important. And being part of the foster care system, we got a little bit of extra baggage that not everyone has. So I wanted to ask you about how you felt about being a birthing person, about being a mother, and were there anxieties related to coming from the foster care system?
There was a lot of anxiety. Because I didn't have a lot of parents. Like, I was adopted and then I was put back in foster care. I didn't have a lot of examples of what it meant to be a good parent or to even be a parent in general, and what it looked like to love your kids. And it created a lot of anxiety for me. A lot of like the full 9 months that I was pregnant, that was really all me and my therapist talked about for that entire time. It was just my trauma coming back up again of my parents, because now I'm a parent. How am I going to love this kid? And it was hard. Like, I would sit in the office and we'd spend an hour talking about how I'm afraid to change a diaper because I've never witnessed people changing diapers. And it may sound like something that's really small, but for someone who comes from the foster care system, those things are huge to us because we've seen like all our entire lives, people fail as parents. And now we have that pressure on us. We don't want to fail our kids. We want to do better than our parents did for us. And it was hard. But I had a lot of reassurance from my therapist that my mother instincts were going to kick in. And I had a lot of doubt when I was pregnant, but sure enough, they did. And they're strong. Like, the minute I can tell something's wrong with my daughter, it's like, okay, we're going to the hospital. Like, things just don't feel right. And I really learned to trust my judgment. And I was able to kind of step up, and I was able to take anger management and really address my own trauma so I don't put that trauma on my daughter. It was a really good experience. Like, in part, it helped me heal from my own trauma, having that experience. And like, the level of unconditional love that I get from my daughter is just mind blowing to me. Like, I don't see her for a couple days. If I'm working, I come home, she's screaming, just excited, and runs up and hugs me. It's the greatest feeling in the world.
That's amazing. Phillisha, something that you kind of mentioned throughout is this sort of not wanting to ask for help and stuff, which I totally understand. And correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure is probably related to our being related to the foster care system and just needing to do it for ourselves. And you've also kind of mentioned, and Cody also mentioned before, being afraid to take advantage of some of the resources for fear that it might like bring CPS into your lives unnecessarily. And I kind of wanted to flip it over to Sarah and see, Sarah, do you see where's the truth in that, and how much do people really need to be worried about? How can we take advantage of resources without being afraid?
For me, Cody like pinched on it. CPS will be in your life just because you're a foster youth, because you've been in foster care. And then they come at you like, well, you've been hurt, so you're damaged and you might hurt your baby. And that is just like something, we already being pregnant, we're panicking like, I need to be a better parent. I'm going to be better than what I've experienced. So that just naturally brings on anything from the county is going to trigger a social worker coming to check on you. And oftentimes when they say checking on you, they're really like just going to take your kid because they can and make you do things to get them back. So it's like, growing up, I've learned like just do it myself and I'll be okay. Just get through this and you'll be fine. You don't have to worry if you just figure it out yourself. When I had my baby, I'm like, okay, I need help.
I think my greatest advice is like, Your fears are not irrational. However, not engaging with the system does not mean the system will not engage with you. Right? Your kid has to still go to school. You still have to go to the hospital. And so not asking for the help that you need is further distancing you and putting you in a situation where CPS might say, oh, you haven't used any resources. What's going on? What's happening? Right?
Yeah, I would say that's the problem. Like it could go either way. There's no right or wrong when it comes to it. And that's something that I had to learn as an adult. Like, if they're going to come, they're going to come.
As we start to wrap up, I'd really like to just hear what your favorite part of pregnancy was.
When I got to Hogue, it was everything I expected. When I found out I was pregnant, like the day I found out, I registered online. So when I got there, even though I went into the emergency room because I was just scared and panicky, they were like, oh, we have you. Go ahead to the maternity ward. And, and they already had like everything ready. They're like, you do have to wait a second for a room, right? But the wait wasn't long. They were very attentive. They made me feel like I was going to be okay. I was expecting to have my baby regular, but it turned into an emergency C-section. And even though I cried the whole time, I felt safe. My baby's father was there. They allowed him to stay next to me the whole time. One of the nurses kept my birthing plan on her clipboard. So that made me feel like she was doing exactly what I put on there. And they talked to me the whole time. And as the doctor was doing my C-section, he was telling me about his kids and when his wife had them. And that just made me like, okay, this man loves his family. My baby's going to be fine, and that was just like the highlight of my pregnancy.
I think I can say like my favorite part about working with young folks is like they are the most capable and are the most qualified. And like, I think the greatest indicator, if you are a young person and your pregnancy is going well, I promise you almost 90% it's not you. It's the fact that the folks around you are not caring for you well. And like, that is your biggest indicator that you should go be around other people because you got it. Like, the universe is behind you. Your anatomy is behind you. All of like the things are behind you. It's just people and environment sometimes don't make that possible. And so like, please have like an unrelenting belief in your ability to do what you feel is best for you and your baby.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, that was really, this whole interview has been really, really amazing. I mean, I've never been pregnant or given birth, but I'm just so amazed at how much you guys all have to offer. And so thank you guys so much for being here and sharing all of your experience. It's been really great. Be sure to check out our show notes for a list of all the resources we discussed.
Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks for stopping by. To hear more and support our cause, like this video and subscribe to our channel. And check out fosterreprohealth.org for more resources.